Welcome to the Balancing Ambitions podcast. I'm your host, Kim Menapace. You are not alone in your pursuit to balance family life, work, side hustles, and taking care of yourself. Balance is not easy to achieve by any means, but we can all work to get better at it together by sharing our stories, tips, and wisdom. Let's dive into this week's episode. Stacy is living proof that big dreams and bold moves can lead to incredible results. With a successful career in sales in corporate America, Stacy cannonballed into real estate with just $50,000 and turned it into a seven-figure portfolio in just a few years. Whew. Now she's on a mission to show other women, including you, how they can do the same with any dream in any industry or even their personal goals. Welcome to the show, Stacy.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And I want to give credit where credit's due that this was from your about page for your book, which is just over your shoulder. So please tell us about your most recent project of many that you're juggling. But I'd love to just really highlight that as a wonderful project
Yes.
you just wrapped up, or I
Oh,
should say launched. It's really just beginning to have the movement you want it to have.
yeah, absolutely. So I did write this book right behind me called Live Big. And it really started out as a passion project from the members of my mastermind group. I was doing a goal setting session with them and realized this was at the beginning of 2024. I realized that throughout the discussion within that goal setting session, I thought very differently than many of my mastermind members were thinking, just about how they were approaching their goals and setting out what they wanted to accomplish for the year. And I felt like I was actually doing them a disservice by not sharing how I think, like what my own journey has been into discovering myself and accomplishing what I want to accomplish. And so I set out to write out everything in my brain for the members of my mastermind community. And I started thinking about the fact that if I'm going to write it out for them, why not write it out in a way that it can serve and support other women too who aren't in my mastermind community? So that's how the idea of the book was born. And it has been such a rewarding experience to be able to see firsthand how the lessons in the book can impact other people's lives. So it's been super, super fun.
I'll never forget when we spoke several months ago when you were still in I think the editing phase with this book, where you had told me that I think someone in your mastermind had said, tell me what's possible and then I'll set
Mhm,
my goal to that was
mhm,
essentially what came up. So we are both come from the Airbnb management space and Airbnb
mhm,
ownership space. And so I think if I put two and two together, someone was probably saying, okay, I've managed five properties. Is 25 in 6 months crazy or is
mhm.
that possible? Oh, and then I'll make it my goal where
Yeah.
you work backwards from
Yep.
that. You say, I want X, and I'm going to
Mhm.
reverse engineer, and I'm going to program my brain to think that I've already achieved the goal and run scripts in my brain daily to continue to embody that because it's going to come true so much quicker if I do that. Is that right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And yes, you remember well. That was indeed part of the conversation. The other part of the conversation, which struck me during that goal setting session, was that the women inside the conversation were comparing, oh, well, Kim wants to accomplish this, so I should adjust my goals because Kim wants to accomplish that. And I think Kim is better than I am, so I need to adjust my goals down. And I'm like, hold on, whoa, time out. Because Kim wants to accomplish something doesn't have any impact on my goals for better or for worse, right? And so I spent many, many years comparing myself against someone else's ruler. And it really hit me hard that night. Like, whoa, I have the ability, since I did work through that on my own, I have the ability to help someone else not make those same mistakes. And again, I think it's so, so important that we each do the hard work internally, because when we work on ourselves internally, that leads to external results.
Mhm. And I think what I like about this book is that it explains it in layman's terms, whereas I think some of your inspiration, because you're very well read, as I know, whereas from I think cyber, I can't, I'm going to say it wrong, but some of those
Mhm.
books that I think have a lot more technical science and stuff in them, and I've tried them
Oh,
before.
yeah.
I've tried them in audio, so I think I've also tried. Sometimes that format doesn't work for some certain types of content we're consuming, but I think that that's what's also very approachable with this type of format from the personal experience and how you're trying to make it very accessible.
Yeah, and it is true. I mean, I've done a lot of the technical learning, and listen, I don't care whether something is the hypothalamus in my mind or the frontal cortex. Like, I don't care about that. Although I do obviously know that there are technical terms for everything going on inside of our brains, but what's important for me is to be able to be a conduit of information, to be able to say, "Hey, listen, this is what I've learned. These are the practical things that I have done, and they have made a huge impact in my life, and here's how you can put them to work for yourself too." Right? And so I did try to keep the jargon out of the book.
The amygdala and all that stuff. Yes, I get
That's
in all
right.
into that where I'm learning all this stuff about the brain, and it's nice, but I think that there's then the just the working knowledge you need, to be
Mhm.
able to really hijack your system to create the life that you want, and I think that's very cool. So, I wanna
Yes.
talk about how you got into real estate in the first place, because I think it ties a lot of threads together about your life as a mom and what your career was and what it is now. So, yeah, bring
Yeah.
me to back
Yeah.
to that moment.
Oh gosh. It's funny. So this was back in 2018, and my oldest son, who was getting ready to go to Florida for college, we went down and did a college visit with him, and very quickly realized the university he was going to be attending did not offer any student housing. And so my husband actually had the idea, well, hey, why don't we buy a property and our son can live there, and then we'll have a place where we can stay when we come visit, but we're investing in something that isn't just throwing money away like rent is. And so we did that. We bought a two-bedroom condo in Orlando, Florida on a golf course. It was about 10 minutes away from campus, had it closed for just a few weeks, and our son came to us and said, "Hey, by the way, I've decided I'm not ready to move, and so I'm just gonna do their online program instead." And my husband and I, like, I still think back to the moment, and I think every bad word known to man probably came out of our mouths. Um, but after that initial OMG, could you not have told us this 2 weeks ago before we just spent all this money on this property? Um, but what are we gonna do, right? And so we decided to get a property manager and rent that property out, and that was our first experience with having any rental properties, and I decided at the time, well, gosh, if I have this rental property, I better figure out what I'm doing. Right. And so I did just a ton of reading, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a ton of online learning, like the world of real estate investing. And so I started out in long term rentals and actually enjoyed it quite a bit. And my husband and I looked at each other after a few months and we're like, "Hey, we're making money at this thing. Like, maybe we should get more of them." And so we started buying long term rentals in Ohio, where we live. And I got my real estate license to support our real estate investing. I had done flips, was doing some wholesaling, and then COVID hit. And the world of long-term rentals kind of flipped upside down because if you recall at the time, there were all these eviction moratoriums that had popped up. And we were getting ready to purchase another long-term rental and thought, you know what? Maybe we should buy a short-term rental because our thinking was someone has to pay in order to get in the front door. And we're not at risk by having a tenant that wouldn't pay us and not being able to do anything about it. So that was our first foray in September 2020 into short term rentals. And I've never looked back. Like, I absolutely have just fallen in love with this industry. And I know that's how we met. And I've met so many wonderful, wonderful people because of this amazing, amazing industry that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's so great to hear that story again, and even hear tidbits that I didn't know about at the time, because it is funny how those happy accidents can really pivot your plans. There, giving your son
I like how
housing.
you say that, a happy accident,
Yeah.
because my son will often remind me, "Hey, mom, just remember, if I would have never done that, you would have never been where you are today." And he's right. He's right. It was a very happy accident looking back on it at the time. It was incredibly stressful, but I think that's so important for us all to remember is things can happen in our day-to-day lives that we don't expect, that quite honestly aren't fun, that force us to pivot, but you never know what gift that can bring until maybe years down the road.
Absolutely. And I think that even when it might not be a happy accident, we bought this cute little 500 square foot cottage in 2019. So, around the same time as you, where that inspired Dave to get his real estate license and then leave his career in healthcare and start to co host and get another Airbnb. And so it just set us off on a totally different trajectory. And I
Mhm.
think that that was taking a small bet where it was a small enough house where I said, okay, if we totally screw up renting it and our terrible Airbnb host will still probably be able to cover the expenses. Okay, so let's try this. And in my
Mhm.
gut, I just knew it was the right call to do when we did the open house and walked through it and got in the car. I'm the more risk averse person of the two of us. And my husband said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I said, "We have to go for it." I just knew, and for me being such a risk averse person, having my gut and my intuition lead me
Mhm.
that way, I just knew we
Mhm.
had to. And now we're going to spend a lot of the summer here. We're not renting that house out too much. We had one renter check in yesterday, and I got paid. And I said, "Oh, this is nice getting a paid." Like you said, you get paid the next day after they check in, which is really
Mhm.
nice. Unlike, there's just differences with midterm and long term rentals, but that is one of the benefits of Airbnb and short term rentals is that it's upfront and early in the process of the person staying, which is nice.
Mhm. Absolutely. And, you know, you look back on that scenario and you think about your intuition. And so often, I think people don't trust their intuition enough. And that's something that I write about in my book. I think of my intuition, I call it my God rod, right? Where I'm a believer. And so I'm not trying to push my faith on anyone, but I am a believer. And so I think about that intuition being in my core, but it also is like a piece of rebar, steel rebar that gives me strength from within, but also serves it sticks out the top of my head and it serves as an antenna, right? It's looking for opportunities for me to lean into, and it's also looking for opportunities to protect me too. And so knowing what it feels like internally when that intuition is whispering, because that's what it does most often is it whispers. It's usually not in bright neon orange signs like, yes, you have to buy this. It's usually a whisper, it's a feeling, it's a gut instinct that so often people overlook. And I think it's tremendously impactful when you can tune into that intuition and act on it. So kudos to you, girlfriend.
Thank you. And I bet with your God rod, I hadn't heard that before. And I loved that when I
Mhm.
heard that it's also guiding you on how to
Mhm.
serve people. And I think we'll go
Mhm.
into this a bit more where now you have a free Facebook community that is in the tens of thousands of people who've joined it. Then you have paid education as well. And I think that those are all extensions of how you serve people. And I think that your
Mhm.
intuition is also even directly or indirectly guiding you on how to serve people. At least that's how I feel and why I
Mhm.
like even this podcast is being able to tell incredible stories of especially parents, very ambitious people who've done career changes, who have hobbies. I want to talk about your singing as well. And I want to
Mhm.
share those stories because I think of those as inspirational for me and I think other people who haven't crossed paths with you per se, that we can be able to elevate those voices and those stories to just entertain and to inspire and to just have other people think about ways they can grow and lean into their intuition and their ways they serve people.
Yeah, and so often I think in this world when we think about I always use the phrase pay it forward. But you can pay it forward with your knowledge, you can pay it forward serving people just by smiling at someone. I mean, it's so simple, but paying someone a compliment in the grocery store. You never know what people are going through, but if we can each look for opportunities to bring joy in someone else's life to help brighten their day, oh my gosh, wouldn't this world be a better place, right?
Mm.
Serving people can be something that simple. Yes, serving people can be bringing education to them or supporting them from a business standpoint or sharing knowledge. But serving people can literally be as simple as paying someone a smile, right? So I want to encourage all of your listeners to try that out for a day.
I think that it compounds too. So I'm known at my office. I go travel, commute into Boston a few days a week, and the security guards that sit at the front desk when you check in, I always wave and say hi, and I've gotten to know their names. And I even after walking by them for weeks, I say, "I've been walking by you for weeks. What's your name?" "Okay, Frank." And so
Yes.
I smile and wave, and I use their name when I go in. And they said, "You're the only person who does that, and you're the only one that comes in looking super happy and with a smile on your face."
Mhm.
And it's so sad because
Mhm.
it's not that everyone else is not happy and grumpy, but it's just it compounds, and they look for that. And if they see me coming through the glass door, they look up and smile and say, "Hi, Kim." And it's because I've had months of interactions with them on that. And again,
Mhm.
that was free. It was just learning their name, saying hi, giving a smile, saying it's a nice day, it's sunny out
Yes.
today. And they just learn to expect that. And I can tell that it just shifts that energy right from the get go.
And you can shift energy to total strangers just by, again, paying them a smile and saying hello. A couple of years ago, we went to the movies with another couple, and they happened to have a Mustang convertible, and it was a beautiful day outside. And we were in one of these areas of town that it's like an outdoor mall area. So there's all these small streets with movie theaters and restaurants and shops, people walking all around. And so my husband and the other gentleman were sitting in the front seat, and Jessica and I were sitting in the back seat. But we decided to ride in the Mustang convertible like we were beauty pageant queens. So we were sitting up, okay, on the back end of the Mustang convertible. So rolling down the street, I decided to start waving at people and saying, "Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you?" I had so much fun in those 5 minutes because do you know how many people looked at me and probably thought, "Who is this crazy lady?" But you know what? They looked back and they smiled and they laughed and they waved. And I thought, how crazy is it that I don't know these people, and just by literally getting outside of my comfort zone, my husband, I'm sure, wanted to bury his head, in his lap, but getting outside of my comfort zone and just being obnoxiously nice to people, and it was so fun. And I've often thought back to that day like, why can't we do more of that? Why can't we intentionally bring joy to other people? Because you know what? It feels so good. So it serves us well by filling up our own cup when we serve other people. So
Man, I think that's a mic drop moment. I don't even know where to go with that. That's so fun. I love that. And I'm so not surprised you did that. You just have that kind of glowing energy and that Midwestern kindness and friendliness. So I'm not surprised at all. All right, I'd love to go and pivot into something I already hinted at earlier, which is your singing. So, I
Mhm.
remember knowing you for a while, and then this came out of the blue where you're in a competitive singing group, and I was just floored. And then you also won your big competition in your singing category. So let's talk about that. Walk us through that.
Oh gosh. Okay, so yes. So this is something that is a little unique. So I sing in a barbershop quartet. So a lot of people don't know what a barbershop quartet is. It's four people singing a cappella, so we have no instruments around us, and I sing a harmony part, so I don't sing the melody. I sing above the melody, so I'm a harmony singer. And this is something that I grew up around. So my dad sang in a barbershop quartet, my grandpa, my uncle. It was very much a family affair. And that's how I met my husband at the age of 17. So I met him at a barbershop quartet competition in New Orleans, Louisiana. He lived in Ohio and I lived in Indiana. And I knew from the moment I met him that this person is special. Like that was my first actual experience with my God rod that I can think back to. Like I didn't know what was different. I didn't know why I felt so strongly about this person, but I knew that I felt very strongly f- from the first get go that I met him. So um, I started singing in a barbershop quartet at the age of 18 was my first quartet, and, I had the good fortune of singing in an international championship quartet back in 2009, and then my current quartet won our international championship in 2023. So we were the 2024 champion. So once you win, it's Sweet Adelines International. Once it's a global organization with about 33,000 women all around the world who sing in these competitions, and you compete at the regional level, and then you move up. And so once you win, you can never compete with them again, which is why we won back in 2009. And then, I didn't win again until 2024 with a completely different group. Um, and now we are actually getting ready to compete in a separate organization's competition. So we're going to Denver in a few weeks and competing in Denver. And it's a whole different ballgame. You get judged in different ways, and it's a whole learning experience and something that I wouldn't trade for the world, because I think um, when you have a hobby that is competitive in nature, you really find yourself in a way that, yes, I'm competitive, but I found myself um, leaning into the joy of music and what it brings to me, to my soul. Again, it's something that makes me very happy. But I also have met the most incredible people, and I have singing sisters, and that they're my best friends, right? So that's really, really fun.
I have so many questions. Also, I didn't know that's how you met your husband. I'll list the 4 questions and then we can dive into them because I think we could
Okay.
spend the whole rest of the podcast talking about this amazing hobby of yours. So, I noticed that when you named all the people in your family who sang in one, it was men. I thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting
Yeah.
that you the first female singing in, is it called a barbershop quartet? And why does that, how did that name originate?
That is so funny. So yes, so growing up, it was my father, my grandpa, my uncle, and the organization used to be called, this is a long one, Society for the Preservation and Encouragement of Barbershop Quartet Singing in America. Holy moly, that's a long name.
That's a mouthful.
And so it was started by men back in the, oh my gosh, I totally am going blank on the year, but I want to say in the 1930s. Okay. If I have any barbershop friends that are listening, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering the history here, but it was at the time it was started by men. A gentleman by the name of OC Cash started it. And I believe it started because they would sing in a barbershop. Like, I think that's how it started. Like, the guys would get together and sing. Okay, now I'm totally off my off my history lesson here, but there was a female spinoff of it, and so the female spinoff is called Sweet Adelines, and, so I was the first woman in my family that sang in a Sweet Adelines quartet, but my husband's mother was also, my mother-in-law was an international championship singer. So my husband grew up in a family that his mom and dad sang in barbershop choruses and quartets. And again, we both happened to be in New Orleans for our international competition that I was attending with my father. Right. So that was my kind of plug into that convention. And yeah, so there's now in the Barbershop Harmony Society, there are men's quartets, there are women's quartets, and there are mixed quartets and choruses too. So I sing in a group with 4 people, but there are groups with 150, 160 people. And so we all compete against each other, and it's like competing against your family, right? So you go and you do your best and you are judged. You are saying, I'm vulnerable, judge me, write down your score, and then you go cheer for the next person.
I love that. Last two questions on this. Does your husband sing? So it sounds like your in-laws sing or
Mhm,
sang, but does he sing?
mhm. He does.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he
And
does,
then,
he sings, and he's also an adjudicator, so he's a judge in the Barbershop Harmony Society as well. So,
oh, okay.
yeah,
And then
super
how do
fun.
you find your 4? Because I remember you saying you won, I think it was
Mhm,
2009, and then you can't compete with
mhm,
that combination of 4, maybe any of that 4 again. Is that right?
mhm.
And so you have to have a full new group of 4 women. Is that right? And how do you get paired or find each other?
Yeah, so you can compete with one other member of that group that won. So my current quartet is called Lady Acapella, and the bass singer in Lady Acapella was also the bass singer in Moxie Ladies, the group that I sang with that won in 2009. So um, we often find each other just through our international conventions and regional conventions, how we go to different conventions in our industry and you meet people from all over the place and you hug each other, and in our world that's what we do, and then we're like, hey, you want to sing something? And so we break out in song in the hotel and in the lobby and all over the convention center. Like, it is so fun. But I found this foursome. Um, Actually, our lead singer, I was coaching her quartet. So I was her coach. And Gretchen, my bass singer, and I were thinking, you know what, we want to get back into competing, because when you compete, like, you're forced to think at a higher level, right? You're forced to stay on top of your game, right? And I really love doing that hard work. And so I happen to have had heard Deidre is our lead singer's name, and I'm like, this girl is amazing. So I knew that she was no longer singing with her quartet, so I called her up, and the rest is history. Our baritone singer, Gretchen, and I sang with back in the day, back in 1996. So our baritone singer, again, like, she's been a lifelong sister, right? And so it's so, so fun.
Oh, that's awesome. What a fun, yeah, pastime hobby. You
Mhm.
don't come across people who are part of these groups every day. So I found it very fascinating to, especially being from the Northeast and stuff. So it sounds like it's more, I don't know, Midwestern and Southern and stuff. So I love that. That's so cool. I did not know that about Chad. Very cool. Fun
Oh,
fact there of
yes.
how you guys met.
Yes, and girl, there are chapters all over the country, like New York, Boston, like all over the country and all around the world. So there are quartets in New Zealand and Australia and England and Sweden and Germany. Like, it's all over. So it's so fun. If you're listening and you like to sing, look up either Barbershop Harmony Society or Sweet Adelines and find your next a cappella gig.
It could be someone, yeah, who used to sing and now has not been,
Yeah.
and now they can have some avenue to
Mhm.
reconnect with that. That's awesome. That's something
Yeah.
that brings them joy. I
Yep.
think what I bring this back to short-term rentals. I remember at your S-Tier Summit for Women, the virtual event you had a couple years
Mhm.
ago. After that event, each day I would find myself sing talking around the house because I remember you joking that you do that and you say, "Oh, I sing," and I could just see how you do your delivery as you're emceeing the event, and I just caught myself doing that, and I loved that. I don't know if I messaged you or texted you about that, but I distinctly remember that when I attended one of your events and summits, I just caught myself doing that all the time.
Isn't that so funny? Because that is something that I do that I don't even know I'm doing it, but I'm always like, "Hello," it's just part of who I am, and other people who aren't used to being around me, they're like, what's going on? Why is she doing that?" So it is a little startling for folks, when they're not around me, but, um, I am glad to hear that you were sing talking. Like, that brings joy to my heart, Kim. Um, You
Not
know,
well. If you ask my husband, it was not
that's
well, but
okay.
I think it is very iconic you, and I loved it. It brought me joy and brought a smile on my face as I was carrying myself those few days with my sing talking voice.
I'm proud of you, girl.
Oh man. So let's dive into your family life, and I also want to talk about how I know that it was a grind making the transition from your corporate life not too long ago in 2022, I think, to the
Mhm,
work you do now. And I know you would get up from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. to work on your co-hosting business, which I
mhm.
applaud you as someone who usually gets up early and has little ones, which makes it very hard for me to get my adequate sleep and get up early. So I'd love to talk more about that and bring that home.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my boys, I have 2 boys, my oldest is 26, my youngest just turned 22, and, at the time when I was still in the corporate world, they had been very used to me traveling a lot for work. I was in sales and account management and held, relationships with large accounts globally. And so I had a lot of day to day responsibility, but a lot of travel involved. And so they had often been used to mom being away for, a couple of days this week and a couple of days next week. So I feel like my family has always been pretty independent. So they were forced to learn how to wash and dry their clothes and cook and do all the things. If they could learn how to do dishes, I would be really excited about that, but those are still opportunities. Um but no, seriously, they grew up very independently, and my husband as well, because I've always been someone who's traveled quite a bit. And when I was transitioning from the corporate world into doing the work that I am today, that travel became less and less, especially during those COVID years, right? Where we couldn't travel as much. Um, and I thought it was really, really important to point out that my boys now, 26 and 22, are actually coming to work with me. Um, and I look back at those days where I was traveling and not here, and I often, as a mom, felt guilty, right? I felt very guilty that I couldn't be at home to help with homework necessarily because I had a business meeting in New York or something like that. And I look back at that now and look at different perspective and say, you know what? I raised good, hardworking young men who are independent but still love their mama, which is something that is very very exciting to me to have them coming into my business. Ask me that in a year if I'm still excited because they're just now starting. But it's been really really rewarding to watch their evolution over time. And yet, sorry, I'm totally going off on a tangent, not talking about leaving corporate, but I just think as a mom we can often second guess ourselves and remember situations where we weren't there with our kids and beat ourselves up about it. And I've done that, like, totally, many times. If I go and ask my kids about those situations that I've replayed in my mind over and over and over and over again about how I'm not a good enough mom, they don't even remember those same situations, right? And so I think perspective is really important for us to have as moms and for us to give ourselves grace and not shame ourselves or not blame ourselves if we have to miss a soccer game or if we miss a goal because we're looking at our phone instead of looking at the basketball game, which I've done. Not beat ourselves up about it, but instead give ourselves grace and the ability to say, you know what, I am doing my personal best, and that's what's super important. And I'm still focusing on my family and my work. So that did not answer your question at all. I am so sorry. I will actually answer your question. I don't know why that just came out of my mind, but it's just like I'm very proud of the fact that um, we can be strong business women and still have a strong family. We don't have to sacrifice one or the other. We can have both. But I think it comes with mindset and work and dedication as well. Sorry.
And
Would
that
you
was
like to ask
don't
me a
ever
question that I'll
apologize
actually
for a
answer?
tangent like that. That is spot on for the things I like to talk about here. And a little bit of a different situation, but I had a moment where I try not to rush, and I don't want my kids to have this anxiousness of, oh, we're going to be late. We're going to be late. Got to be on time. Got to go. Got to rush out to
Mhm,
daycare. And last week, at the end of the week, I was driving the kids to school, and there was this massive snapping turtle. Maybe my dad says it was 100 years old, as he claims that from the photo I sent him. I'm like, sure, it's a 100-year-old turtle, but it was huge. And my son could see it from the car. My daughter was a little too short. She's 3 years old and in her car seat. And so we drove by a couple times, and I had taken a photo, and it was hard getting them in the car. She was a little touchy that morning. And I was like,
mhm,
honey, I'll show you the photo when we get to school, because I got a couple great photos of it. And then we got to school and I left, and I forgot to show them to her. So I sent them through the app on the for the daycare. But I spent the rest of that day feeling sad that I didn't slow down and ask myself, could I have had 60 seconds to pull the
mhm,
car over, unclip her, pick her up to see this? She loves
mhm,
animals, and see the turtle,
mhm,
and then buckle her back in and continue on our way. And
mhm,
I am telling myself from that moment on, I'm not going to rush through life. If I was even a minute late for a work call because I was doing that,
mhm,
I'm not gonna remember the work call. I'm gonna remember that I didn't stop to, smell the
mhm,
roses that day with my
mhm.
kids. And I hope when we fast forward 20 years, she's not gonna remember, "Mom, remember when you wouldn't let me see the snapping turtle on the way
That's
to
right.
daycare when I was 3?" And it's funny because I've had panels with our exec team who all have kids in their 20s, and they said, the same thing, that their kids' recollection of things totally doesn't register like theirs. When they say,
Mhm.
"Oh, I was so sad when this happened," the kid's like, "What are you talking about? I don't remember that." But
Right.
I think that those moments of reflection can be so powerful for us, but don't use them to
Mhm.
beat ourselves up, because it can be
Yeah.
so easy to do.
Oh, totally, and I'm really glad that you said that because it's very easy in a reflection moment for us for years to play that same scenario out, not just that day, but for years, and I think what's so important is for us to look at those moments and go, "Oh, wow, I wanna do that differently next time." But not judge yourself for making the decision that you did in that moment. Um, I think that's awesome, and what a great example, and you know what? There will be many more snapping turtles in her life. I have no
She's
doubt
been
about it.
asking to see one daily since that, just rubbing salt in the wound. And I'm like, "As soon as I see one, honey, I will pull over and show
That's
you," because
right.
everyone else is spotting them. My husband saw one at the gym. My friend saw one in his front lawn. I'm like, "Where are they? I can't find them now, now that I need one."
You have you have repelled the snapping turtles, that's right.
I need to attract one.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Oh,
But
man.
yeah, so sorry, transitioning out of corporate is something that again, I go back to my God rod and go back to intuition. I didn't have everything figured out, right? I had a plan. I had saved up money. I had income streams, so it wasn't like I did it blindly. I absolutely had my plan in place and my financials in place. But still, we don't have crystal balls. We don't necessarily know, okay, this is how the next 5 years are going to play out, right? And so I think always trusting our gut and intuition to lead us in the best way and still make smart decisions, strategic decisions, build out action plans, um, is so important. But when I left corporate, I knew I was doing the right thing. And I knew that this was the best thing for me, for my family, for my own happiness. And yet to this day, every day I wake up and I'm like, I am so darn happy to be able to live a life where I'm serving other people and investing in real estate and serving guests and helping other people in their own business and life journeys. And if you would have asked me 10 years ago, would I be doing any of this? I would have said, you're crazy. I would have said, no way. Right. And so, again, just going back to that intuition, trust your gut, trust your God rod, and trust that it will serve you in the right way and pivot if you need to. Right.
Mhm. I think that there's a component of faith in there too that's baked into
Mhm.
what you're saying. And then I also think that trusting your mind. We've talked about if you had to lose all your money or lose your mind, which one would you choose? And us and all our mentors would say absolutely all the money, because the
Mhm,
mind is what's going to rebuild that from scratch.
mhm,
And
mhm,
that's your imagination, that's your creativity, that's your, like you said, pivoting and being able to do that when you made the best decision you could at the moment, but then new circumstances came, the market changed. There's a bajillion things that can go wrong or change your course, but
yep,
being able to be, flexible and creative and innovative and how you handle that is so important. And I think that that's something that I've learned in this experience, seeing a lot of people leave a corporate job to take a risk in this area, some with a lot less of their ducks in a row than you. But they had that faith, and they also have that faith in themselves that they will figure it out and change
mhm,
course as
mhm,
needed. And
mhm,
I say I pride myself on being very scrappy, and I will figure out anything. And it might not be the way I exactly expected it to play out, but I am driven and gritty like you are. So I think that
mhm.
that's something else that I hear in your story.
Absolutely, and, to your point, yes, faith in a higher power I do have, but also faith in myself, and that faith does not come through a magic wand. It just doesn't, like, Tinkerbell does not sprinkle faith dust over my head. Faith comes through action and actually doing what we say we're gonna do, not just to other people, but what we tell ourselves. And that's where I feel like I see other people perhaps lacking in that faith. They may follow through for other people, but secretly they're telling themselves, "Oh, I'm not going to eat carbs anymore." And then they see a loaf of bread and they're like, "Oh, what's one more day full of carbs?" Right? Now, I'm not here to say whether you should or shouldn't eat carbs, but if you tell yourself you're going to do something and then you break that promise, you are training your brain that you don't keep your promises, right? And so I think it's so important to keep your promises to yourself just like you would want to keep your promises to other people.
I love that. I believe that too. I think that Ed Milet, someone who I used to listen to for mindset work in the last 8 years or
Mhm.
9 years or so, and I remember him saying, confidence is promises you keep to yourself.
Mhm.
So if you say you're going to go to the gym at 5 a.m. and then you sleep in and then don't go all day, you're eroding that confidence. And
Mhm.
again, teaching yourself that you're not going to keep those promises to yourself instead of, and then when
Mhm.
you do it, it's just so much more additive on
Yeah.
helping build up good momentum for those things.
Absolutely, and the other thing too that bleeds into that are the words that we say. Even the subtle choices in our vocabulary, like, "Oh, I'm going to try. I'm gonna try to get up and go to the gym at 5 AM." Well, if you are trying to go to the gym at 5 AM, you are training yourself that you may not do that, right? And so in my mind, again, I talk about this in my book, it's commit, be, do. We are going to commit to what we want to accomplish. We're going to be the person that takes the action to accomplish those things and do the things that committed person does. And so there's no escape route, if you will. If we say we're going to accomplish a goal, it's committing to that goal. And what you started out this conversation is reverse engineering. We figure out the action plan, and that action plan may change multiple times. But if we're committed to that goal, we must keep our commitment. We must keep our commitment. And that is how confidence and faith in yourself is built.
Yeah. I think that something that I have had to learn over the last 6 years of being a parent is really leaning into this phrase I heard it in the bodybuilding world when I was doing that 7 years ago, was being strict on your goals, but flexible in your methods. And
Mm,
something that I do with that same example on I'm going to work out at 5 a.m. is I don't say at the specific time if I know that's harder to do. I'm still balancing a kid with waking up every night. I
mhm,
am working on my sleep scores and my readiness score on my aura ring being really high. And so
mhm,
I said to myself, I'm running 3 miles today. I'm training for races. And I said I could do it in the morning. I'm working from home, might work from home today. And if I don't, I'm doing it at night. But when I put my head down on my pillow at night at 9 o'clock, 9:30, I will have done the 3 miles. And I think that is okay. But if you say I'm going to do 5 a.m. and not do that, that's very dicey. It's the
Absolutely.
it's what you can commit to. So my commitment wasn't when I would do it is I'm going to get that 3 miles done. And I have a couple plans depending on how things
Mhm.
go. My son woke me up at 2 a.m. and it took me a while to fall back to sleep. So I did not get there at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. So it'll be an after work thing, but that's okay because I'm still keeping that promise because I kept it realistic from the beginning. And I
I
think that
love
was
that.
challenging. And I used to be so rigid with that stuff, but it was easier to stick to a very rigid disciplined schedule, even getting up at 4 a.m. without
Mhm.
kids and stuff. But I just had to build flexibility into that to allow
Yeah.
myself the letting myself have lofty goals, but then having that grace with how I want to parent and how I want to carry myself in my day. And that's the way I found it. But you can't overcommit if you do that either. So I think
Mhm.
that's a key for that as well.
I love that, and I love your approach of staying flexible in how you're going to carry out that commitment. And I think that that's a really good lesson that, you know, maybe the time of day or whatever, the time you're gonna go to the gym isn't necessarily the commitment, it's actually getting those 3 miles in. And so, making sure we're honoring the right commitments and not on, placing undue burden on all these extraneous things that really aren't gonna move the needle. Whether you go at 5 AM is not gonna move the needle. Whether you get those 3 miles in will, right?
That's exactly right. All right. Oh, I
So good.
loved this conversation today, Stacy. As we wrap up, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're a busy lady. So, is there any, parting words or advice you want to give to people, especially, an audience with very ambitious parents juggling multiple things, juggling sanity, self-care, jobs, careers, pastimes, anything else you'd love to share before we, close out for today?
Oh gosh, I will just say that I'm sure your listeners and viewers already know this, but in case there's someone who might be listening or watching that doesn't, um, you can do anything you set your mind to, and sometimes it can be really easy to get caught up in the how. How am I going to do all those things? And what I would encourage your listeners and viewers to do is not get caught up in the how, but get caught up into what it feels like when it's right. What does it feel like when your intuition is speaking to you? What does joy feel like? What does stress feel like? So that you can begin to recognize those feelings and know when you're naturally finding things that bring you joy, and you can incorporate those into your life, and you can have the business of your dreams and the life of your dreams at the very same time.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Stacy. It's been such a pleasure. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you and all your communities that you've built?
Good question. So there are two different websites to find me on. The first one is livebigwithstacy.com, and the second is stacystjohn.com. I'm also online on social media: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places. Just look up my name and um, you'll find me.
Has a great presence. You'll be able to find her quickly. All right. Well, thank you so much. And everyone, have a beautiful day. As always, if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review because when you leave a review or share an episode, you make it easier for someone else to find us and benefit from these stories and tips we share. There is a link to everything we talked about in the show notes. Thank you all for listening to the Balancing Ambitions podcast and have a beautiful day.